I was babysitting a couple of siblings, a brother and sister, and the sister had a friend over to play with as well. The two girls were 5. The boy was probably 7 or 8, a little older. I was watching them during the day on a weekend because their single mom had to go into work. When I got to the house, the boy was zoned out watching TV, and the little girls were playing with dolls in another room. The morning went fine, but in the afternoon, as I am making lunch, I hear screams in the backyard. I run back there, and the boy is wielding a seriously sharp kitchen knife. The two little girls have barricaded themselves into one of those plastic playhouses and are screaming in terror, and the boy is madly stabbing the knife through the slits in the windows, laughing. As I run over, I am shouting at him to stop, but he keeps stabbing, and I have to tackle him and wrestle the knife away. I ended up getting some cuts on my hands in the process, and the boy was kicking, punching, and biting trying to get out of my grasp. I somehow managed to drag him away and throw him in his room and call his mom at work. She comes home a few hours early, clearly pissed that I called her and grumbling about how he obviously wasn't going to hurt the girls. She gave him a good smack, but basically told me I was a bad babysitter. I was not that old myself, so I just nodded and went home without getting paid. I got a reference from a friend who was busy to babysit for this family who was vacationing nearby at a house near the ocean. House turned out to be less than a mile from the beach with nothing but sand between us and it. There were only a couple vacation homes, and they were all pitch black when we arrived. The dad picked me up from my house. There was no moon or street lights, so I could not see the ocean, but we were close enough to hear it. This would have been creepy enough all by itself. So the parents leave, we have popcorn and watch some TV for an hour or so before it's his bedtime. The kid is about 3 or 4. I wasn't sure. He didn't talk to me at all. So with our current horror movie locale, this was creepy thing. I put him in this travel crib to sleep in and settled down in a chair in the room because I thought maybe he'd be scared to go to sleep alone in a strange place with his parents gone. Well, he proceeded to fucking kneel in the crib and stare at me through the mesh walls of it for a solid 30 minutes. I tried coaxing him to lay down, offered to tell a story or two. About this time, the mom calls to check in. I inform her he's not falling asleep, and she says, "Oh, you have to leave him alone in there and close the door. You can leave the light on and just ignore whatever you hear. He'll tire himself out eventually." So I'm like, what the fuck? But whatever I tell him good night and leave to close the door, he'll still just fucking staring at me. I go sit in the next room when this thumping noise starts slow and then continues to get louder. So I get up to peek into the room to see what he's doing. I know the mom told me not to worry about it. I look in and he's banging his head on the side of the crib pretty hard, but it's one of those flimsy travel cribs, more like a playpen than anything, so he's not going to hurt himself, but he was lifting the whole thing a few inches off the ground with the force of his head bouncing. Soon as I go to close the door, he stops, stares right at me again with the most blank and creepy face. I quickly closed the door. The banging started again and continued for another 20 to 30 minutes and then stopped. I peek in one last time and he's fast asleep, but in the air, face on the mattress but turned to the side, so I knew he could breathe okay. The next 3 hours of complete silence were a bit torturous. I couldn't wait to leave. It's possible he had issues, lack of speech in his behavior, but to not warn me at all was kind of wrong of the parents. I never sat for them again, thank God. When I was in high school, I was babysitting for 2 neighborhood kids. The little girl, Lily, never wanted to go to sleep. She would come up with any excuse to not have to go to bed every weekend she tried to stay up later. So when she got up and told me she was scared to go to bed, that she kept hearing voices, I wrote it off as her trying to get out of going to bed. I had put her and her brother, Leo, to bed an hour ago, and the boy was already asleep. I humored her though and went into her room and listened. I didn't hear a thing. I checked out her window, everything, and heard nothing. So I compromised with her and laid in bed with her until she fell asleep. After she fell asleep, I went in the hall and I heard voices. I felt all the blood rush out of me, and all I could think about was Lily coming into the living room an hour ago, crying that she was scared, that she had heard voices begging me to believe her. And the voices were coming from in the house, more specifically down the hall where Leo was. I went over to the room and knocked. I don't know why I knocked, but I think I was just so scared I didn't know what to do. The voices stopped instantly and I heard Leo. It sounded like he was crying. He was around 9 years old and his parents were taking a weekend trip away. I opened the door and he was laying face down on the bed crying. I was sort of relieved. I figured he was just upset his parents were going to be gone so long, and I had made up the whispering in my head. So I went over to the bed and tried to ask Leo what was wrong. And he said, "They're here." The next thing I know, I hear the closet door being banged open and I heard screams. I just threw myself on Leo. I didn't even bother with turning and seeing what was going on. I thought someone was in the house and they were going to kill us, and I covered his body with mine. I was so scared I didn't know what to do. I had already started to cry and begging things like, "Please take anything, don't touch the kids, please, please, I'll do anything, just don't hurt us." Then I realized that everyone was just laughing, including Leo, and I turned to see two of my friends in the room. They had thought it would be funny to play a joke on me. And we all lived in the same neighborhood, so they got Leo in on it. They were just laughing and repeating everything I was saying mockingly. I went from being terrified out of my mind to more enraged than I have ever been in my life. Started with hearing crying like noises coming from outside. Actually kind of sounded like a baby crying, but the one I was babysitting was sound asleep. Went outside to investigate but didn't see anything. But when I closed the door, there was blood on the floor behind me, leading all the way through the kitchen and up the stairs. I didn't want to act scared or anything in front of one of the other little kids. I was babysitting, so I just tried to act cool. Kept saying, "It's all right, probably nothing," while in my head I was screaming, "What the fuck? What the fuck?" Went upstairs anyway by myself to investigate, and the blood stopped and was smeared on the bathroom door. Properly shitting myself at this stage. Opened it up and saw a cat bleeding from its face hiding in the bathtub. Turned out it just got in a fight with another cat and must have ran in when I opened a door to check outside. The noises were just those weird noises cats make when confronting each other. Parents also didn't mention they had a cat, so that didn't help. Only thing that confused me though was the blood on the bathroom door was pretty high up. Not really sure how the cat could have got it up there. Needless to say though, opening up that door was one of the most tense moments of my life. Felt like I was in a horror movie. A few years ago, when my older son was a baby, my husband and I and our neighbors would often congregate in our driveway after kids were in bed. We brought our baby monitor out and kept it off to save the shitty battery, but we'd turn it on and listen every few minutes. One night I turned it on and immediately heard my son just wailing, crying and screaming, like he'd been at it for a while. I can't let my kids cry it out, so I rushed inside, and as soon as I opened the front door I heard silence. I went up to his room and he was fast asleep. I went back outside and asked if anyone else needed to check their kids, but none of them used a baby monitor. I asked if I was crazy, if anyone else had heard the screaming, and they all confirmed it. I guess it could have been another baby monitor nearby, but all my nearby neighbors were outside with us. I have no doubt that I heard a voice. I don't believe in ghosts, but still creeps me out a few years later.